Morning, Ellie,
Hi, Natalie. Good morning.
and welcome to all our listeners. Today, we are welcoming you to the Mind Power Paradigm with Natalie
And Elly.
and you. So
And you.
today we were talking a little bit before we hopped on about competing desires and the season that we're in right now. There's no perfect time to actually be speaking about competing desires, right? There's maybe the desire to get healthy, but then there's also the desire to go eat the holiday cookie tray, or there's the desire to, spend some time working on your business and propelling that forward, or there's the competing desire of maybe wanting to go grab lunch with friends or shop or do those things. So, Ellie, let's dive into that topic because I think that it would be super powerful for our listeners to hear about today.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that this is because this comes up with everybody. We're as entrepreneurs and people that we do have private lives also. I mean, I find I have the exact same thing happening for me today. Oh, I've got a social event, and yet I have obligations per that I have declared as obligations for myself and my own integrity to work on my business so that I can move it forward and help the people that I'm working with. And one of the things, though, Natalie, that with these competing desires, like wanting to do one thing and then pulled into, but I want to do that too, is it possible, and this is just a thought, is it possible to be able to have both and to liberate ourselves perhaps in language? So one of the things that I teach my clients is to start eliminating the word should. I'm big on words. That's my entire business is words. Well, not all, but most of it is words and the way that we're talking to ourselves and how we use language. And when we eliminate the word should, we actually liberate ourselves, because should starts making us feel obligation. It makes us wrong when we don't, like, oh, I should exercise today. And I didn't. Well, it was my intention to exercise and I did not fulfill on it. That does not make me a bad person or wrong. I just did not fulfill on my intention. So I get to look at it again. I find that removing should liberates us. I'm using this word again. It is so freeing in our mental space. And so that's the first thing that I'm going to suggest anybody starts to do when they start looking at, okay, what am I going to do now during this, particularly this season, the holiday season, with exercise, food, business obligations, everything. What do you
Absolutely.
think, Natalie?
I love it. And I'm a big believer in the words that are spoken out into the universe or what we're going to receive. So using the word should or I get to will change, the entire pathway in your brain and how you're chaining that action with thoughts. So I absolutely love that you do that with your clients because I'm a huge believer in that and what we put out into the universe, right? So let's talk about competing desires. And, sometimes people just don't have the capacity for one desire over the other, meaning, sometimes you're trying to get healthy, but your husband was just deployed, you're a mother of four. So the capacity that you're within right now, it's okay, I believe, to stop torturing yourself and just decide that priorities right now are not there. Right. So that's one instance. But then I feel that there is other instances where there are no circumstances holding you down, right? So what would you say to the person who doesn't have circumstances holding them down and they're fighting with competing desires? Now, for me, it's always the desire that wins is always that negotiation for 1% more in that direction, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's why you have the results you have. And this is something that I look at, I grapple with. I don't like to use the word struggle, only I find myself in this situation a lot more. And that's why, in terms of my own personal weight reduction journey, it has taken a lot longer. First, because I'll give you an example. Last night, I had this incredible urge. I had an incredible urge. I wanted cookies. Whether it's psychological, whether it's a habit, whether it's actually my body, I wanted cookies. And there were no cookies in the house, and there were no cookies in the house, and there was no cake in the house. And there there was nothing, except there was a snack that I have, and I was it's low in calories, but it's also extremely full in proteins. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to have this snack, and this will satisfy that urge that I was going through. And it was just silly. And I started making myself wrong for wanting to eat something sweet. And yet my body knows that I love sugar. I mean, I've been raised on sugar. So it's a competing desire to want to remove sweet for me, when I know that sweets cause inflammation, when I know that I would feel 100 times better without it. And, I'm sure that other people can identify with this particular, let's call it struggle, right? Or whatever word you want to choose here, circumstance.
For sure. And I believe that it's really short-term pleasure versus long-term pleasure. You're unwilling to delay the gratification, have that delayed gratification of a goal that you set for yourself. Again, whether it be in your relationships, business, health. And what I really like to tell my clients is take 5 seconds to ask yourself, I think sometimes we say a little bit won't hurt, but the truth is a little bit turns into a lot of it. And then we have this all in, all out mentality where it's, oh, the day's ruined. Instead of just having the simple conversation with yourself of, okay, I overate at this meal, or this was not part of where I wanted to go in my day with food choices, but it's okay. I could still finish the day strong, right? Or how about catching the thought error? Like actually catching the thought error of, I need to have this right now, right? And taking 5 seconds to say, is the decision she's making right now, or is the decision he or she is making right now, is this the decision that he or she is would make in the morning, right? So, or is that constant disappointment in the morning time as well? So is the decision you're making now would be the same decision you would, if you ask yourself that in the morning? If the answer is yes, go for it, go grab the cookies, right? But if the answer is no, I generally wake up and I'm disappointed that I didn't complete that project, or I ate the bag of cookies. Have that conversation with yourself to change that neural pathway of just that instant gratification, that habit that you've been practicing for most of your life, and taking that 5 seconds to break that chain. And then if you go to do it an hour later, guess what? It starts to weaken. That neural pathway starts to weaken. And now we're starting on a path to create new habits.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love what you're saying. And it's so interesting because for me, what you just said totally applies to to the way that I speak, and what I'm transferring it now to, I'm thinking about my, the other part of my life, that I will hold off saying something, and I don't have a problem waiting and evaluating it and asking myself, is this something that I want to say now? Is this something that needs to be said? Is this something that I need to share? So I am able to do that. And you want to call it discipline, if that's what it is. I don't know if it's discipline or it's an awareness that I make those choices when it comes to words and language. And then at the same time, last night, I'm standing in front of, I don't eat bags of cookies, okay? But I'm standing there in front of the cabinet, and I really want to eat something sweet. Like if I had chocolate, I would have had a big piece of chocolate. I'm not going to lie, okay? And what is it that's driving that? Obviously it's an emotional thing, and that's a whole other conversation. But I recognize, and I'm able to discern between doing that in language, and yet not following through when it comes to, I really don't want to be eating this chocolate. My leg might hurt in the morning. I don't know. Okay, like that. So I didn't eat chocolate.
Right. We were just talking about this, right? So you don't have to love not eating chocolate, or you don't have to love sitting in front of the TV with a hot cup of tea instead of the bag of dark chocolate or whatever it was in that moment. You don't have to love that. But what you should start to love is the outcome that not doing that gives you, right? So I don't love just drinking tea without a piece of chocolate, but I do love the outcome of feeling refreshed in the morning, feeling energetic in the morning, loving how my brain has clarity, right? So, or for instance, I don't love sitting down at the computer and working on, said project, but because it takes up 4 hours of my day. But I do love the outcome that it gives me, which is growth in my business, growth in my bank account, whatever that is, right? So you don't have to love everything you do or every choice you have, but you should start to fall in love with the outcome that it gives you.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are such wise words. And if we can transfer this, like there's an old saying that says the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. And so it's possible to just really recognize exactly what you're saying. Choose the outcome that you want, right? Again, this gets us into living forward, living into the created version of ourselves, living into what it is that we intend to have, and to basically give up those short-term gratification moments for the long-term desires, and to reprogram our brain, reprogram our neural pathways.
Right. I mean, it's really just stop negotiating with yourself. The desires are just a moment in time in your life where you negotiate. It's either you negotiate 1% more towards this end or 1% more towards that end. But if you just stop the negotiation process and you take 5 seconds to ask yourself, is the statement of a little bit of this won't hurt me, is that true? Is that a true statement? Right? Because what has the past told you? A little bit, right? That negotiation for a little bit usually turns into a lot of it, right? So I always call people on, you know what, and just ask yourself that question, because the second you break that chain of behavior, the second you break that neural pathway and you start to weaken it, you won't negotiate with yourself at every meal. You won't negotiate yourself when you sit down to do that business project. You won't negotiate yourself when you have to go work on that relationship that you've been, putting off for some time to even address maybe something that has been happening there. Because you're breaking the chain.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Absolutely. Wise words, lady. Wise words.
It's a topic that I think we should run with all month, Elly. I think that so many people in this season are competing with so many different desires, whether it be work and play, health in the cookie tray, health and alcohol. There's so many competing desires, and it really is just working on the short-term pleasure versus the long-term pleasure, and finding what works for you, and starting with what you said in the beginning of using the word, and moving forward with words like I get to, or I should.
No, should. I intend. I'm like the should police with my clients, all right? Like I was like, oh, I don't let them should on me, okay? And it's always funny because, just FYI, they can use should. I said, listen, I don't care if you use should anywhere else, but not on our calls, okay? And so,
should is actually telling your present self, right, that your future self should do these things, right? If you think about it in those terms. So yeah, it's actually a word that you should put in the bucket and not find again.
And we use it so unconsciously. All right, we just use it so unconsciously. All right, darling.
Talk today.
Yeah, I think have a great weekend, and I will touch base with you and everybody else listening. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And our intention is that you make choices that are empowering for you, and then also that these choices will also empower other people around you without shitting on them.
I love it, Elly. I love it. Have a beautiful weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, thanks. Take care. Bye, Natalie. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.